Sarah Martinez had learned to live with ghosts. 6 years as a night shift nurse had taught her that the past stayed buried if you worked hard enough to forget it. But on this particular Tuesday night, at 11:47 p.m., her past would roll through the emergency room doors on a gurney, bleeding out from a gunshot wound to the chest. The man who had destroyed her life without explanation was about to give her all the answers she'd stopped asking for. And those answers would force her to make an impossible choice that would define who she really was.
Quick pause. Before we continue, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? If you're enjoying these stories, make sure to hit subscribe, because tomorrow's episode is absolutely mind-blowing.
The fluorescent lights of County General Hospital hummed their familiar song as Sarah refilled her third coffee of the night. The break room smelled like burnt coffee and antiseptic, a combination she'd long stopped noticing. 8 hours into her shift, and the night had been mercifully quiet, just routine check-ins, medication rounds, and paperwork that seemed to multiply like bacteria in a petri dish. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through messages. Her sister had sent photos of her nephew's birthday party that afternoon. Sarah had missed it, of course. Night shift nurses missed everything: birthdays, holidays, sunrises. But the pay differential was worth it. And besides, Sarah preferred the nights. Fewer people, fewer questions, fewer opportunities for small talk that inevitably led to the question she hated most. So, are you seeing anyone? 6 years ago, she would have answered that question differently. 6 years ago, she'd been planning a wedding with a man she thought she knew everything about. Michael Torres. Charming, protective, devoted Michael, who worked some vague government security job he could never quite explain. She'd loved him with the kind of certainty that made her friends jealous and her mother cry happy tears. Then, 7 days before their wedding, he'd vanished. No note, no explanation, no goodbye, just an empty apartment and a disconnected phone number. Sarah had filed a missing person report, but the police had been strangely dismissive, suggesting that maybe he'd just gotten cold feet, as if 5 years together and a ring on her finger meant nothing. The first year had been hell. She'd alternated between fury and devastation, convinced that any moment he'd walk back into her life with some explanation that would make it all make sense. The second year, she'd started therapy. By the third year, she'd stopped crying. By the fourth, she'd stopped looking for him in crowds. By year 5, she'd even gone on a few dates, though nothing stuck. Now, in year 6, she'd finally achieved what her therapist called acceptance. Sarah called it numbness, but it worked just as well. Dr. Amanda Price pushed through the break room door, her silver-streaked hair pulled back in a no-nonsense bun. At 58, Amanda was the kind of doctor nurses actually respected, competent, direct, and never too proud to learn a nurse's name. "Martinez, we've got an incoming. GSW to the chest. ETA 3 minutes, you're up." Sarah nodded, dumping the rest of her coffee down the sink. Gunshot wounds weren't uncommon in our corner of Los Angeles, but they always carried a particular weight. Someone's worst night was about to become her responsibility. She walked quickly toward the emergency room, her sneakers squeaking against the linoleum. The familiar pre-trauma checklist ran through her mind: airway, breathing, circulation, assess, stabilize, support. She'd done this dance hundreds of times. The ambulance bay doors burst open with their characteristic bang. 2 paramedics wheeled in a gurney at a controlled run, the patient's face obscured by an oxygen mask and the organized chaos of emergency medicine. "Male, mid-30s, single GSW to the left chest," the lead paramedic rattled off. "Vitals are borderline, BP's dropping, heart rate's climbing, lost consciousness twice en route, but came back both times. No ID on him, but he kept saying a name. Sarah. Just Sarah." The world tilted sideways. Sarah stepped closer, her professional autopilot warring with a sudden inexplicable dread. The paramedics transferred the patient to the ER bed, and as they moved aside, she saw his face. Michael. The name stuck in her throat like a physical object. Michael Torres, older somehow, with new lines around his eyes and a scar she didn't recognize cutting through his left eyebrow. But unmistakably, impossibly him.
His eyes fluttered open, unfocused and pain-glazed, scanning the room until they landed on her face. Recognition flared, followed by something that looked almost like relief. "Michael!" The word barely audible through the oxygen mask. "I need vitals," Dr. Price's voice cut through Sarah's paralysis. "Martinez, I need you focused. What's his BP?" Training took over. Sarah's hands moved automatically, checking monitors, adjusting IV lines, her mind screaming as even her body performed the familiar choreography of emergency medicine. BP's 90/60 and dropping. Heart rate 125. Oxygen saturation 89%. "Get him stabilized for imaging," Adanda ordered. "I want to know exactly what we're dealing with before I move him to surgery." The next 20 minutes blurred together. Sarah worked with mechanical precision, avoiding Michael's eyes even as she felt them tracking her movements. Every touch was professional, clinical, distant, the touch of a nurse doing her job, not the touch of a woman who'd once known every inch of this man's body. When they finally wheeled him toward radiology, Sarah's hands were shaking so badly she had to grip the edge of the nurse's station to steady herself. "Martinez!" Amanda appeared at her elbow, concern creasing her forehead. "You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." The description was so accurate that Sarah almost laughed. "I need 5 minutes. Take 10. Rodriguez can cover. But Sarah..." Amanda's hand on her arm was gentle but firm. "Whatever that was back there, I need you clear-headed when he comes back. Can you do that?" Sarah nodded, not trusting her voice, and fled to the break room. She'd spent 6 years trying to forget him. Now she had to save his life. But the real question wasn't whether she could, it was whether she should. Because when Michael Torres disappeared, he hadn't just broken her heart, he'd taken something else with him. And what he was about to tell her would shatter everything she thought she knew about their love story.
The break room's harsh lighting made everything worse. Sarah gripped the edge of the sink, staring at her reflection in the small mirror above it. Her face looked pale, her eyes too wide, like someone had just told her the laws of physics had been repealed. Michael was alive. Michael was here. Michael was bleeding out on a gurney 3 hallways away. And he'd said her name. The door creaked open. Amanda slipped inside carrying 2 bottles of water. She handed one to Sarah without comment and leaned against the counter beside her. "You gonna tell me what's going on?" Sarah took a long drink. Buying time. "That patient, Michael Torres. I knew him. Past tense." "How well?" "We were engaged." The words felt strange in her mouth, like a language she'd forgotten how to speak. "He disappeared a week before our wedding, 6 years ago. No explanation, no contact, nothing. I thought he was dead, or that he just decided he didn't want me." Amanda let out a low whistle. "That's not in any training manual I've read. Can you take over his care? I can't. I shouldn't." Amanda's voice was kind but firm. "If this were any other situation, I'd agree with you in a heartbeat. But we're understaffed tonight, and that man is critical. I need you. More importantly, he needs you. Whatever history you two have, right now he's just a patient who's going to die if we don't do our jobs." "I don't know if I can be objective." "I'm not asking you to be objective. I'm asking you to be professional. There's a difference." Amanda squeezed her shoulder. "Besides, something tells me you've got questions. Maybe this is your chance to get answers." Before Sarah could respond, her pager buzzed. Michael was back from radiology. She found him in ICU room 4, looking smaller somehow than he had in her memories. The bullet had missed his heart by 2 centimeters. A miracle, or a tragedy, depending on how you looked at it. They'd stabilized him for now, but he'd need surgery within the next few hours. Sarah checked his vitals with practiced efficiency, adjusting his IV drip, monitoring his oxygen levels. She could feel his eyes on her, but refused to meet them. "Sarah." His voice was rough, barely above a whisper. "Please, look at me." She didn't. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. 5 minutes to explain. Explain what? The words came out harder than she intended. Explain how you left me 7 days before our wedding? Explain how you made me feel crazy for 6 years, wondering what I'd done wrong. Explain. I had to protect you. The words stopped her cold. She finally looked at him, really looked, and saw something in his eyes she'd never seen before. Fear. Not of dying, of something worse. Protect me from what? Michael glanced at the door, then back to her. What I'm about to tell you. Sarah, I need you to understand that everything I did, every lie, every moment of pain I caused you, it was to keep you alive. That's cryptic bullshit, and you know it. I worked for the FBI, undercover operations, deep cover. The security consulting job was a front. I was investigating a cartel, Los Zetas Eway operation. Weapons trafficking, drug distribution, human smuggling. I'd been on the case for 3 years when I met you. Sarah felt the room tilt. What? I wasn't supposed to fall in love. That wasn't part of the plan. But you, his voice cracked. You were real. You were good. You were everything that world wasn't. I thought I could keep you separate, keep you safe. So you just left? A week before the wedding, my cover was blown. Someone inside the bureau was feeding information to the cartel. They sent me proof, photos of you leaving the hospital, getting coffee, visiting your sister. They knew your routine, Sarah. They knew everything, and they gave me a choice: disappear or watch you die. The heart monitor's steady beep filled the silence between them. That's insane. Sarah struggled to process it. That's insane. You could have told me. We could have gone into witness protection together, or... They were watching you for 3 years after I left. Michael's eyes were intense, pleading. 3 years, Sarah. FBI surveillance confirmed it. If I'd contacted you even once, they would have known I still cared. They would have used you to get to me. The only way to keep you safe was to make them believe you meant nothing to me anymore. Sarah's hands gripped the bedrail. 6 years of anger, of self-doubt, of wondering what she'd done wrong, and it had all been a lie. A noble lie, maybe, but a lie nonetheless. You let me think I wasn't enough. You let me think I was so unlovable that you'd rather disappear than marry me? I know. Michael's voice broke. God, Sarah, I know, and I've hated myself every day since, but you were alive. You were safe. That was all that mattered. Why are you here now? Why risk everything by coming to this hospital? To me? Michael's expression shifted to something darker. Because the past caught up to me, and I'm out of options. Before Sarah could respond, alarms started blaring. Michael's blood pressure was plummeting. His chest wound had reopened internally. I need a crash cart, Sarah shouted, her training overriding everything else. And page Dr. Price. Tell her we need surgery now. The next several minutes were chaos. Controlled medical chaos, but chaos nonetheless. Sarah worked on autopilot, doing everything she'd been trained to do, keeping Michael alive through sheer force of will and 8 years of emergency medicine experience. When they finally stabilized him enough to move to surgery, Amanda pulled Sarah aside. He'll make it through, but there's something you need to know. The police are here. For his statement? No. Amanda's face was grim. There's a bolo out for him. Be on the lookout. Sarah, they're saying Michael Torres is wanted for questioning in the murder of an FBI agent. He told her he left to protect her, but now the police are calling him a murderer? Had the last 6 years been built on a lie, or was the truth even darker than she had imagined? Sarah was about to discover that sometimes the person you think you know best is actually a stranger wearing a familiar face.
Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time. So if you're enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
Sarah's world fractured into before and after. Before, there had been simple pain. The pain of abandonment, of lost love, of unanswered questions. After, there was only chaos. She stood in the hallway outside the surgical wing, her back pressed against the cool wall, trying to make sense of what Amanda had just told her. Michael wasn't just a ghost from her past. He was a fugitive, a murderer. 2 LAPD detectives waited near the nurse's station, their postures radiating the particular brand of patience that came from years of stakeouts and bad coffee. The older one, a black man with graying temples and a face that had seen too much, caught Sarah's eye and headed her way. "Nurse Martinez?" He flashed a badge. "Detective Raynon Cooper. This is my partner, Detective Lisa Chen. We need to ask you some questions about Michael Torres." Sarah's nurse training kicked in. Cooperate with law enforcement, protect patient privacy, maintain professional boundaries. "I can't discuss this medical condition without—" "We're not asking about his condition," Detective Chin interrupted. She was younger, sharper around the edges. "We're asking about your relationship with him." The word relationship felt like a trap. "We knew each other. Past tense, 6 years ago." "Knew each other how?" Sarah hesitated. "We were engaged. He left before the wedding. I haven't seen or heard from him since." Cooper and Chin exchanged a glance that made Sarah's stomach drop. "And tonight," Cooper's voice was gentle but probing, "when he came into your ER, did he say anything to you? Anything that might explain why he came to this specific hospital?" "He was unconscious most of the time," Sarah lied and hated herself for it. "What's this about?" "Michael Torres is a person of interest in the death of FBI Special Agent Carlos Rivera. Rivera was found shot to death in his home 3 nights ago. Forensic evidence places Torres at the scene." The hallway seemed to tilt. "That's impossible. Michael wouldn't what? Wouldn't kill someone." Chin's eyes were hard. "Miss Martinez, Torres disappeared 6 years ago. You have no idea what he would or wouldn't do. For all you know, the man you knew doesn't exist anymore." "That's enough." Dr. Amanda Price appeared from nowhere, inserting herself between Sarah and the detectives like a shield. "My nurse has answered your questions. If you need anything else, you can wait until Mr. Torres is out of surgery and stable enough to speak with you. This is a hospital, not an interrogation room." Cooper raised his hands in a placating gesture. "We're just doing our job, doctor." "And I'm doing mine, which means protecting my staff from harassment." Amanda's voice brooked no argument. "You can wait in the lobby or come back in the morning. Your choice." The detectives retreated, but not before Chen handed Sarah a business card. "If Torres says anything at all, you need to call us. Obstruction of justice is a serious crime, Nurse Martinez." When they were gone, Amanda steered Sarah toward the break room again. "Sit, breathe. Then tell me what the hell is really going on." Sarah slumped into a chair, her body suddenly exhausted. She told Amanda everything. Michael's explanation about the FBI, the cartel, the threats, the reason he'd vanished. When she finished, Amanda was quiet for a long moment. "Do you believe him?" "I don't know," Sarah admitted. 6 years ago, I would have bet my life on Michael being a good man. But 6 years is a long time. People change, especially people living in the shadows. "The question is," Amanda said slowly, "what are you going to do if he wakes up and asks for your help?" Sarah didn't have an answer. Michael survived surgery, barely. Dr. Kim, the trauma surgeon, reported that he'd been touch and go on the table, but somehow he'd pulled through. He was moved to a private recovery room in the ICU with a uniformed officer stationed outside his door. Sarah wasn't assigned to his care. Amanda had made sure of that, but she found herself drawn to his room anyway during her rounds. She'd watch him through the window, this man who'd once been her whole world, now reduced to a collection of monitors and IV drips. On her third pass, she found the police officer gone. Shift change, probably, with the replacement running late. Without thinking too hard about it, Sarah slipped inside. Michael's eyes opened immediately. He'd been awake, waiting. "You look terrible," Sarah said, pulling up a chair. "You look beautiful." His voice was rough from the breathing tube, but the words were clear. "You always did." "Don't," Sarah held up her hand. Don't do that. Don't try to charm your way through this." "I'm not trying to charm you. I'm stating a fact." He shifted slightly, wincing at the pain.
Did the police talk to you? They said you killed an FBI agent, Agent Rivera. They said they have forensic evidence. They do. Michael's admission hit like a physical blow. Because I did kill him. Sarah stood up, ready to leave, but Michael's next word stopped her. He was the one who sold me out. She turned back slowly. What? Rivera was the leak, the one feeding information to the cartel. I figured it out 6 months ago, but by then, I was out of the bureau. No badge, no authority, no one who would believe me over a decorated agent. His eyes burned with something between rage and desperation. He was going to do it again, Sarah. He'd made a deal to hand over the identities of 3 undercover agents. 3 people who'd trusted me, who I'd recruited. They'd be dead within a week. So you killed him. Sarah's voice rose. You just decided to play judge, jury, and executioner? I tried going through channels. I sent evidence to the FBI's Internal Affairs Division, to the DOJ, to everyone I could think of. But Rivera had friends in high places. They buried everything, called me paranoid, unstable, bitter about being forced out of the bureau. Those 3 agents, one of them has a wife and 2 kids. Another just got engaged. The third is 26 years old and still believes in justice. I couldn't let them die for Rivera's greed. So you committed murder. I committed justice. And I'd do it again. The conviction in his voice terrified her. This wasn't the Michael she'd known, the man who'd rescue spiders rather than kill them, who'd cry at sad movies, who'd believed in doing things the right way. This Michael had edges sharp enough to cut, hardened by 6 years of whatever hell he'd been living in. Where's your evidence? The proof that Rivera was corrupt? Flash drive, hidden in my apartment. Unit 3B, 2847 Maple Street, behind the bathroom mirror. He paused. But Sarah, you can't go there. If the police find out you're helping me, I'm not helping you. I need to know if you're telling the truth. The police have friends too, Michael warned. Some of Rivera's buddies are LAPD. If they catch you, I'm a nurse, checking on information for a patient's medical history. Nothing more. It was a lie, and they both knew it, but it was the lie she needed to tell herself to walk out of that room. Sarah left the hospital at 6 a.m. as her shift ended. She drove to Michael's address on autopilot, her mind a carousel of competing thoughts. She was probably making the biggest mistake of her life. She was possibly destroying her career. She was definitely crossing lines that shouldn't be crossed. But she had to know.
The apartment building was one of those generic LA complexes, with stucco walls and dying palm trees. Unit 3B was on the 2nd floor, accessed by an exterior staircase that creaked under her feet. The door was sealed with police tape. Sarah looked around. Early morning, no one in sight. She pulled on the latex glove she'd swiped from work and carefully lifted the tape. The lock was simple. She'd learned to pick locks in college, a useless skill she'd never thought she'd actually need. And 2 minutes later, she was inside. The apartment was small, sparse, impersonal. The furniture looked rented. There were no photos, no personal items, nothing that suggested anyone actually lived here. It was a way station, not a home. The bathroom mirror was exactly where Michael said it would be. Sarah carefully removed it from the wall, her hands shaking slightly. Behind it, taped to the drywall, was a small flash drive in a plastic bag. She had just slipped it into her pocket when she heard voices outside. She definitely came this way. I saw her car. Sarah's heart stopped. Through the window, she could see Detective Chen and another officer approaching the building. She ran. Out the back door, down the rear stairs, through the alley behind the building. Her scrubs made her blend in, just another medical worker heading home after a long shift. She reached her car 3 blocks away, gasping, and drove off before her hands stopped shaking enough to grip the wheel properly. She'd crossed a line, a major one, and there was no going back now. She'd stolen evidence. She'd broken into a crime scene. She'd officially become an accomplice to a murderer or a crusader for justice, depending on who was telling the truth. The flash drive in her pocket held all the answers, but some answers come with a price. And Sarah was about to learn that truth doesn't always set you free. Sometimes it just gives you a different cage.
Sarah didn't go home. She couldn't risk leading the police there if they'd somehow spotted her leaving Michael's apartment. Instead, she drove to a 24-hour diner on the edge of town, ordered coffee she didn't drink, and sat in a corner booth with her laptop. The flash drive felt heavy in her pocket, weighted with implications. She plugged it in with shaking hands. The drive contained a single encrypted folder. Sarah stared at the password prompt, mind racing. What would Michael use? Something she'd know, if he'd wanted her to find this. She tried their would-be wedding date. Nothing. Her birthday. Nothing. Then, on a hunch born of remembered intimacy, the name of the stray cat they'd found together, the one they'd planned to adopt after the honeymoon. The folder opened. Inside were hundreds of files. Bank statements showing wire transfers from Rivera to offshore accounts, text messages between Rivera and cartel members discussing shipment schedules and agent locations, photos of Rivera meeting with known criminals, audio recordings of conversations that made Sarah's blood run cold. But the worst was a video file dated 3 weeks ago. She clicked it, earbuds in, and watched as Rivera sat across from 2 men in an expensive restaurant. The audio was clear. Michael must have planted a bug. Rivera was discussing 3 undercover agents by name, providing their current locations and operational details. The price? $2 million, paid in cryptocurrency. The Martinez woman's boyfriend already tried to expose me once, Rivera said on the video, laughing. Pathetic, lovesick fool. No one believed him. They all think he went crazy after I convinced him to leave her. Made him think we were protecting her, when really we just needed him gone before he figured out too much. Sarah's hands clenched. Michael hadn't just left to protect her. He'd been manipulated into leaving, convinced by a corrupt agent that his presence endangered her life. The cruelty of it stole her breath. The video continued. Rivera detailed his plans for the 3 undercover agents, when and how the cartel would move on them. It was scheduled for 5 days from now. 3 days ago, Rivera had been killed. The agents were still alive. Sarah yanked out her earbuds, her mind reeling. Michael hadn't just been telling the truth. He'd been the only one willing to act when the system failed. He'd committed murder, yes, but to prevent 3 more. But did that make it right? Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. I know you were at Torres's apartment. We need to talk. Come to the address below. Come alone. You're not in trouble. I can help. Detective Cooper. The address was to a parking structure downtown. Sarah's instincts screamed trap, but she was out of options. She couldn't go home, couldn't go back to the hospital without answers, or just run forever. She copied all the files from the flash drive to her laptop's encrypted backup, then to a cloud storage account she created on the spot. If something happened to her, at least the evidence wouldn't disappear. The parking structure was nearly empty at 8 a.m. Sarah found Detective Cooper on the 3rd level, leaning against an unmarked sedan, alone. You came, he said, sounding genuinely relieved. I wasn't sure you would. You said you could help. How? Cooper glanced around, then gestured for her to get in the car. When she hesitated, he held up his hands. I'm not arresting you, Miss Martinez, but we can't talk here. Too many eyes. Sarah got in. Cooper drove them to a residential neighborhood, parking on a quiet street lined with Jericonda trees. I'm going to tell you something that could get me killed, he said without preamble. Carlos Rivera was dirty. I've known for 2 years, so has half the department. But he had protection from the FBI, from city officials, from people with enough power to make problems disappear. Sarah's breath caught. You believe Michael. I believed the evidence. And I believe that sometimes good men have to do bad things to stop worse things from happening. Cooper turned to face her fully. Torres came to me 6 months ago.
Showed me what he had on Rivera. I told him I'd help, but I needed time to build a case that wouldn't get thrown out or buried. I was working on it, gathering my own evidence, finding allies in internal affairs who couldn't be bought. So why didn't you stop him from killing Rivera? Because I didn't know he was going to. Cooper's jaw tightened. I thought I had more time. Then Rivera turned up dead and Torres went on the run. Now I'm in an impossible position. I've got evidence that proves Rivera was corrupt, but Torres still committed premeditated murder. Even if his motives were noble, he's still guilty. So what do you want from me? The flash drive. Cooper held out his hand. I need the original. The files on it can corroborate what I've been gathering, and together it's enough to expose not just Rivera, but the whole network protecting him. It won't exonerate Torres. He'll still face charges, but it'll show why he did what he did. Context matters. Sarah pulled out the flash drive, held it. The weight of it represented everything: Michael's freedom, her own safety, the truth about what happened 6 years ago. If I give you this, she said slowly, I need a guarantee. Michael doesn't get moved to general population. He goes somewhere safe, where Rivera's friends can't get to him. I can arrange protective custody during trial. And I want immunity, full immunity for accessing his apartment and taking this drive. Cooper nodded. I can get that in writing by this afternoon. Sarah handed over the flash drive. The moment it left her fingers, she felt lighter and heavier all at once. There's something else, Cooper said, pocketing the drive carefully. Torres was shot 3 nights ago, right? Same night Rivera died? Yes. Who shot him? Sarah blinked. I assumed, I don't know, someone from the cartel or Rivera's friends? That's what I thought too. But the bullet they pulled out of Torres, ballistics, just came back. It matches a gun registered to an LAPD officer, Detective Marcus Webb. The name meant nothing to Sarah. Who is that? Rivera's old partner, also dirty, also protected, and also currently missing. Cooper started the car. Someone's cleaning house, Ms. Martinez. And your Michael? He might be the only person who knows enough to bring down the whole operation, which means he's the most valuable and most endangered witness we have. I need to get back to the hospital. Not yet. First, you're coming with me to meet Assistant District Attorney Helena Reeves. She's one of the few people in this city who gives a damn about actual justice. You're going to tell her everything, and she's going to put you in protective custody until this is over. I'm not hiding. I have a job, a life. You're a loose end, and loose ends get cut. If Rivera's network figures out you have copies of that evidence, you're dead. So you're going to do exactly what I tell you because I'm trying to save your life. Sarah wanted to argue, but the look in Cooper's eyes stopped her. He'd seen something in this case that terrified him, and that terror was contagious. Her phone rang. The hospital. She answered. Sarah, it's Amanda. Her voice tight with stress. You need to get back here now. It's Michael. Someone tried to kill him.
Sarah burst through the hospital doors at a dead run, Detective Cooper right behind her. The ICU was in controlled chaos. Security guards everywhere, Dr. Amanda Price shouting orders, nurses scrambling. The uniformed officer who'd been stationed outside Michael's room sat in a chair, holding a bandage to his head. What happened? Sarah demanded. Amanda pulled her aside. Someone dressed as hospital staff walked right past security, knocked out the officer, and entered Michael's room with a syringe full of potassium chloride. Would have stopped his heart in seconds if I hadn't been doing rounds. I walked in just as he was injecting it into the IV line. I hit the panic button and he ran. Did you see his face? Surgical mask, scrubs, hospital badge. Could have been anyone. Amanda gripped Sarah's shoulders. But here's the thing. The badge was real. It belonged to a respiratory therapist who called in sick this morning. Someone has inside access, Sarah. Someone who knows this hospital. Detective Cooper was already on his phone, calling for backup, for surveillance footage, for a lockdown of the building. But Sarah knew it was too late. Whoever had tried to kill Michael was already gone, melted back into the city. She pushed past security into Michael's room. He was conscious, eyes wide, breathing hard. The moment he saw her, something in his expression cracked. "You're okay," he breathed. "I was afraid they'd gone after you." "Someone just tried to kill you with potassium chloride." I checked his vitals with shaking hands. "Who, Michael? Who's doing this?" "Rivera's network. They know I have evidence, and they know I gave it to someone. They're eliminating threats." He grabbed her wrist, his grip surprisingly strong for someone who'd just been through surgery. "Sarah, did you get the flash drive? Please tell me you didn't." "I gave it to Detective Cooper. He's one of the good ones. He's been building a case against Rivera for 2 years. Michael's eyes closed in relief. "Thank God. Then it's over. The evidence gets out, the network falls, and those 3 agents are safe." "It's not over for you," Sarah said quietly. "You still killed a man, Michael. Evidence or no evidence, you're going to prison." "I know. I knew that from the moment I pulled the trigger, but I couldn't live with myself if I'd let those people die when I could have stopped it. So I'll take whatever punishment comes. As long as you're safe, as long as those agents are safe, I can live with that." "You left me." The words came out raw, 6 years of pain compressed into 3 syllables. "You let me believe I wasn't enough, that I was so broken that you'd rather disappear than be with me. Do you have any idea what that did to me?" "Every day," Michael whispered. "I thought about it every single day. I saw you sometimes, at the hospital. I'd sit in the parking lot and just watch you, walk to your car after your shift, making sure you were okay, hating myself for what I'd done to you. That's creepy, not romantic." "I know. I know it was wrong. All of it was wrong. But Sarah, you have to understand, loving you was the only real thing in my life. Everything else was lies and covers and pretending to be someone I wasn't. You were the only person who knew the real me, even if you didn't know what I really did. And giving that up, giving you up, it destroyed me." Sarah pulled her hand away. "You don't get to make me feel sorry for you. You made a choice. You chose to handle everything alone instead of trusting me enough to face it together." "I'm right." Michael's voice was steady despite the tears streaming down his face. "You're absolutely right. I was a coward. I convinced myself I was protecting you, but really, I was just too scared to risk your life the way I'd risk my own. I thought I was being noble, but I was just being selfish." The honesty of it hit Sarah like a wave. This Michael was different from the Michael who'd left 6 years ago. That Michael had made unilateral decisions, had treated her like something fragile to be protected, rather than a partner to be trusted. This Michael understood what he'd done wrong. But understanding didn't erase 6 years of damage. "I don't know if I can forgive you. I don't even know if I want to." "I'm not asking you to." Michael met her eyes. "I'm just asking you to believe that I loved you, that I never stopped, and that if I could go back and do it differently, trust you, bring you into it, face it together, I would. But I can't. All I can do is tell you the truth now and hope that someday, maybe you'll understand why I made the choices I did." Detective Cooper appeared in the doorway. "Ms. Martinez, we need to move Torres to a secure location. This hospital isn't safe for him anymore." "Where are you taking him?" "County lockup, medical wing. 24-hour armed guard, limited access. He'll be safe there until trial." He squeezed his arm, building.
The next 2 weeks were a blur of depositions, interviews, and media frenzy. The corruption scandal exploded across every news channel. Rivera's network had been even more extensive than anyone had realized. 12 arrests total, including some of the most powerful figures in LA law enforcement. The 3 undercover agents Michael had saved were extracted safely. Their photos appeared briefly in the news, young faces, grateful faces, alive faces. Sarah stared at them and thought about the impossible mathematics of justice. 1 life taken to save 3. Was that right? Was that wrong? Or was it just tragic in a way that defied easy answers? Assistant District Attorney Helena Reeves kept Sarah in protective custody for the first week, then released her with a security detail. Sarah went back to work, back to her night shifts, back to the familiar rhythm of vitals and medication rounds. But everything felt different now. Amanda found her in the break room one night, 3 weeks after Michael's arrest. "You've been quiet," Amanda observed, sitting down across from her. "I don't know what to say anymore." "Have you been to see him?" Sarah shook her head. "He's in county lockup. I could visit, but I don't know what I'd say." "Do you love him?" The question was so direct that Sarah almost laughed. "I don't know. I loved who he was 6 years ago. I might even love who he is now, but I don't know if that's enough. Love doesn't fix what's broken." "No," Amanda agreed, "but sometimes it gives you a reason to try." Sarah's phone buzzed, a text from Detective Cougar. "Trial date set, 3 months. Torres's lawyer wants to talk to you about being a character witness. No pressure." 3 months. 90 days until Michael faced a jury and learned whether his sacrifice would be seen as murder or something more complicated. Sarah made her decision on a Tuesday night during the quiet hours when the hospital felt like a ship floating through darkness. She put in for vacation time, 2 weeks, her first real vacation in 3 years. Then she scheduled a visitation at county lockup. The visiting room was exactly as grim as she had expected. Gray walls, scratched plexiglass, phones that smelled like disinfectant and desperation. Michael was let in wearing orange scrubs, his wrists cuffed, looking thinner than she remembered, but somehow more solid, more present. He picked up the phone. She picked up hers. "You came," he said, and the surprise in his voice made her chest ache. "I came." "Why?" Sarah had practiced this speech a dozen times, but now that she was here, all the words felt wrong. So she just told him the truth. "I spent 6 years being angry at a ghost. And I'm tired, Michael. I'm tired of carrying around all this rage and hurt. I'm tired of letting what you did define who I am. So I'm here to tell you something important." Michael waited, barely breathing. "I don't forgive you," Sarah said clearly. "What you did, leaving me, lying to me, making me doubt myself for 6 years, that was cruel. Even if your reasons were noble, the result was cruel. And I can't just erase that." "I understand. But," Sarah continued, "I believe you. I believe you loved me, I believe you thought you were protecting me, and I believe you're a good man who made impossible choices in an impossible situation. That doesn't excuse what you did, but it explains it, and that's enough for me to not forgive, but maybe to understand, and maybe eventually to move past." Michael's eyes were wet. "That's more than I deserve." "Probably." Sarah managed a small smile. "Your lawyer wants me to be a character witness. I'm going to do it. I'm going to tell them who you were, who I think you still are. I can't promise it'll help, but I can promise it'll be the truth. Sarah, and when you get out, whether that's in 5 years or 15, we're going to have coffee. Just coffee. And we're going to talk like two people who used to know each other and are figuring out if they want to know each other again. No promises, no expectations. Just possibility." "Possibility," Michael repeated like the word was precious. "I can live with that." "Good, because that's all I've got to offer right now." They sat in silence for a moment, just looking at each other through the scratched plexiglass. It wasn't closure exactly, but it was something. A crack in the wall, a sliver of light. "The agents you saved, the 3 people, they testified in your defense already, did you know that? All 3 of them. They told the prosecutor that they'd be dead if not for you." "It won't be enough to clear me." "No," Sarah agreed, "but it'll be enough for them to understand why. And maybe that matters." A guard tapped on the glass. "Time's up." "I'll be at the trial," Sarah said, standing, "so you'll have one friendly face in the crowd. Thank you for coming, for being willing to leave the door open, just a crack. That's what you do for people you loved. Even when they break your heart, even when you're not sure you can trust them again, You leave the door open just enough to let the light in. She hung up the phone and walked out, feeling lighter than she had in 6 years. The trial lasted 2 weeks. Sarah testified on day 9, telling the jury the Michael Torres she had known, a man who cried at sad movies, who'd volunteered at a soup kitchen every Sunday, who had once driven 3 hours to return a wallet to a stranger because it contained family photos. She also told them about the man who'd left her without explanation and how that had damaged her. She didn't pull punches. She didn't make him a hero. She just told them the truth. He was complicated, flawed, human. The jury deliberated for 3 days. In the end, they found Michael Torres guilty of voluntary manslaughter rather than first-degree murder. The judge sentenced him to 8 years with possibility of parole in 5. It wasn't freedom, but it wasn't life either. Sarah attended the sentencing. When the judge read the verdict, Michael turned in his seat and found her face in the crowd. He mouthed 2 words, "Thank you." She nodded once. That would have to be enough for now.
Sarah adjusted her stethoscope and headed down the ICU hallway, mentally reviewing her patient list for the night shift. 18 months had passed since Michael's trial, and life had settled into a new normal. She still worked nights, still drank too much coffee, still occasionally thought about what might have been. But she'd also started therapy, joined a book club, went on a few dates that didn't end in disaster. Slowly, carefully, she'd started building a life that belonged to her, not to the ghost of a relationship that ended 6 years ago. Her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. New evidence came to light. Motion for early release filed. Hearing next month. Thought you'd want to know. Cooper. Sarah stared at the message. Early release. Michael could be out in a matter of weeks if the motion was granted. She should feel something. Excitement? Dread? Something. Instead, she felt calm. Whatever happened, she'd be okay. She'd survived his leaving. She'd survived his return. She'd survive whatever came next. Because that was the thing about impossible situations. You survived them by putting one foot in front of the other, by showing up for your own life, by choosing hope even when it felt foolish. Sarah slipped her phone back into her pocket and continued down the hallway. She had patients to care for, lives to help save. The rest, Michael, the past, the uncertain future, could wait. For now, she had work to do. And that, at least, was something she could control.
The coffee shop was crowded for a Tuesday afternoon, filled with students hunched over laptops and business people conducting meetings over lattes. Sarah sat at a corner table, her hands wrapped around a mug that had gone lukewarm while she waited. The door opened. Michael walked in. He looked different. Older, yes, but also somehow younger. The hardness that had been in his eyes at the hospital was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like peace. 3 years in prison had changed him in ways she couldn't quite name. He spotted her, and his face did something complicated. Relief, nervousness, hope, fear, all at once. Sarah raised her hand in a small wave. He walked over. "Hi," he said. "Hi. You look good." "You too." It was true. Prison had hollowed him out in some ways, but also stripped away pretense. He looked like someone who'd faced himself and made peace with what he'd found. "Sit down. I ordered you a black coffee, 2 sugars, unless your preferences have changed." "No." He sat, wrapping his hands around the mug like it was anchoring him to reality. Still the same. In that respect, at least. They sat in silence for a moment. Not uncomfortable exactly, but weighted with everything unsaid. "Thank you for coming," Michael finally said. "I wasn't sure you would." "I said I would. I keep my promises." "I remember." He took a sip of coffee and set it down. "Detective Cooper told me what you did, testifying on my behalf, providing context for the jury. My lawyers said your testimony was a big part of why I got manslaughter instead of murder, why I got early release.
I just told the truth. The truth is complicated. Yes, Sarah agreed. It is. Another silence. Then Michael leaned forward, his eyes intense. I need to say something, and I need you to let me say all of it before you respond. Can you do that? Sarah nodded. I've had a lot of time to think. 3 years of nothing but thinking, really. And I've realized some things. First, I was wrong. Not just about leaving you, that's obvious, but about how I loved you. I put you on a pedestal, made you this perfect thing that needed protecting rather than seeing you as a partner who could face danger with me. That was my failure, not yours. He paused, gathering his words. Second, I can't ask you to wait for me, or to try again, or to give me another chance. That would be selfish. You've built a life without me, and you deserve to live it without my ghost hanging over you. But I want you to know that I'm different now. Prison does that. Either breaks you or rebuilds you. I chose to be rebuilt. Michael, let me finish. His voice was gentle but firm. Third, and most important, whatever happens between us, whether we become friends or strangers or something in between, I need you to know that you were the best thing that ever happened to me. Loving you taught me what it meant to be human, to be real, and that's a gift I carry with me every day. He sat back, done. Sarah took a long breath. My turn? Your turn. You're right that you are wrong. You're right that you treated me like something fragile instead of seeing my strength. You're right that you can't ask me to just pick up where we left off like 9 years hasn't passed. She met his eyes. But you're also wrong about one thing. What's that? You're wrong if you think I'm here out of obligation or guilt or pity. I'm here because I choose to be. Because I've done my own work, my own healing. And I've decided that holding on to anger hurts me more than it hurts you. And because... She paused, making sure she meant what she was about to say. Because I think there might be something worth salvaging. Not the relationship we had, that's dead and buried. But maybe something new? Something built on honesty instead of secrets. Michael's breath caught. What does that mean? It means we start over, from scratch. You're not my ex-fiancé. You're just Michael, someone I used to know, someone I'm getting to know again. We have coffee, we talk, we see if there's anything real between the people we've become, not the people we used to be. No promises? No promises, Sarah confirmed, just possibility. I can work with possibility. They smiled at each other, small, tentative smiles that felt like the beginning of something fragile and important. So, Sarah said, settling back in her chair, tell me about prison. And I don't want the sanitized version. I want the real story. Who did you become in there? Michael laughed, surprised. You really want to know? I really want to know. And so he told her. About the first month when he thought he'd break. About the cellmate who taught him meditation. About the prison library where he'd read everything from philosophy to poetry. About the therapy sessions where he'd finally confronted what his childhood had done to him. The way his father's abandonment had primed him to abandon others when things got hard. Sarah listened, really listened, and saw him clearly for the first time. Not as a hero or a villain, but as a person. Flawed, complicated, trying his best and sometimes failing. When he finished, she told him about her life, about the therapy that helped her understand her own patterns, how she'd always chosen people who kept her at arm's length because vulnerability terrified her, about the dates that didn't work out because she kept comparing everyone to him, about the moment she'd finally let go of the fairy tale and accepted reality. They talked for 3 hours. When the coffee shop started closing, they moved to a park and kept talking. About everything and nothing. About the past and the present and the uncertain future. As the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Michael walked Sarah to her car. "Can I see you again, same time next week?" "Yes," Sarah said. "But Michael, I need you to understand something. I'm not the girl you left 9 years ago. I'm stronger now, but I'm also more careful. I don't give my heart easily anymore. If we do this, whatever this becomes, you have to earn my trust. Every day, one choice at a time." "I understand." He held out his hand. "Hi, I'm Michael Torres. I'm 37 years old. I'm a convicted felon trying to rebuild my life, and I'd really like to get to know you better." Sarah looked at his hand, then at his face. She saw sincerity there, and hope, and the kind of hard-won humility that only comes from losing everything and finding yourself in the wreckage. She took his hand. "Hi, I'm Sarah Martinez. I'm 35 years old. I'm a nurse who's learned that surviving heartbreak makes you braver, not bitter. And I'd really like to get to know you too." They shook hands like strangers meeting for the first time. And in a way, they were.
Some love stories don't have happy endings. Some have complicated ones. Endings that require courage, forgiveness, and the willingness to start over without guarantees. Sarah and Michael's story wasn't about finding their way back to who they were. It was about finding their way forward to who they could become. Because the truth is, we're all just broken people, trying to do better. We make mistakes. We hurt the people we love. We carry regrets that weigh like stones. But we also get second chances if we're brave enough to take them. Not second chances to recreate the past, but second chances to build something new from the pieces. Sarah learned that loving someone doesn't mean trusting them blindly. It means choosing to see them clearly, flaws and all, and deciding whether they're worth the risk. Michael learned that protection without partnership is just control by another name. And together, they learned that sometimes the greatest act of love is letting go of who you were so you can discover who you're meant to be. 3 years after that first coffee shop meeting, Sarah stood in the same park where they'd walked that evening. The seasons had changed countless times, just as they had. Michael was beside her now, not as the ghost who'd haunted her past, but as someone real, present, imperfect. They'd taken it slow, painfully slow. Coffee dates that became dinner dates, conversations that stretched into hours, therapy sessions, both individual and together, where they learned to communicate the things they'd once hidden. There were setbacks, moments when old wounds reopened and trust felt impossible. Nights when Sarah wondered if she was making the same mistake twice. Days when Michael battled the demons that prison had left behind. But there were also breakthroughs. The first time Sarah laughed at one of Michael's jokes without the shadow of the past dimming it. The moment Michael realized he could be vulnerable without it being a weakness. The gradual understanding that they weren't trying to recapture what they'd lost. They were creating something entirely new. Sarah had learned to set boundaries, to demand honesty even when it hurt. Michael had learned to give it, to trust her with his darkness instead of trying to shield her from it. They'd learned together that real love isn't about grand gestures or perfect moments. It's about showing up, day after day, choosing each other even when it's hard. The 3 undercover agents Michael had saved attended their small, intimate wedding ceremony. So did Detective Cooper, who'd become an unlikely friend through it all. Dr. Amanda Price officiated, her words about second chances and earned trust, bringing tears to more than a few eyes. It wasn't the fairy tale wedding Sarah had planned 9 years ago. It was better, because it was built on truth, on scars that had healed into strength, on a love that had survived the worst and chosen to keep growing. "What are you thinking?" Michael asked, his hand warm in hers as they watched the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and pink. "I'm thinking," Sarah said slowly, "that we're proof that some broken things are worth fixing. Not because they'll ever be perfect, but because the cracks are part of what make them beautiful." Michael pulled her closer, We're not fixed, though. Not completely. No, Sarah agreed, leaning into him. But we're healing. Together. And that's enough. The road ahead of them was uncertain. Maybe they'd find their way back to each other, building something stronger from the ruins of their first love. Or maybe they'd realize they were better as friends, or as people who once meant the world to each other, but now belonged to different futures. Either way, they were free. Free from the lies, the secrets, the weight of what might have been. Free to choose each other, or not, based on truth instead of fantasy. As it turned out, they chose each other. Not blindly, not perfectly, but consciously, every single day. They chose honesty over comfort. They chose growth over stagnation. They chose to believe that people can change, that mistakes don't define you, and that sometimes the greatest love stories are the ones that almost ended before they truly began. Sarah never forgot those 6 years of pain. She carried them with her, not as a burden, but as a reminder of her own resilience, of her capacity to survive heartbreak and emerge stronger. Michael never forgot his time in prison, the lives lost and saved, the impossible choices that had led him there. They both carried their scars openly, no longer hiding from each other or themselves. And in that honesty, that vulnerability, they found something more valuable than the fairy tale they'd once imagined. They found a partnership built to last. Not because it was easy, but because they'd both learned that anything worth having is worth fighting for. Years later, when Sarah told their story to young nurses facing their own heartbreaks, she always ended the same way. Sometimes the person who breaks you is the only one who can help you become whole again, but only if you're both willing to do the work. Only if you both choose honesty over comfort, growth over resentment, and possibility over certainty. Love isn't a destination. It's a choice you make every day. And the most beautiful love stories are the ones where both people choose to keep choosing, even when it's hard. And that freedom, hard-won and precious, tested and proven, was more than just a happy ending. It was a new beginning. The kind that only comes after you've faced the worst, survived it, and decided that despite everything, hope is worth the risk. In the end, Sarah and Michael didn't just find their way back to each other. They found their way forward, to healing, to honesty, to a love that was real because it was earned. And sometimes that's the most powerful love story of all. The end.
Up next, 2 more incredible stories are waiting for you right on your screen. If you enjoyed this one, you won't want to miss these. Just click to watch and don't forget to subscribe.